Welcome to my channel, and let's get at it. Now, this is devastating. And I'm going to say that again. This is devastating. And those are not my words. Those are the words of Congressional Black Caucus members after the Supreme Court's decision and basically took a big body blow to the Civil Rights Acts and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, the Supreme Court decision deemed it as a racial gerrymandering. That's what the charge was. And Justice Alito pretty much basically made the decision. He gave the opinion. So I'm going to share the opinion with you, and I'm going to make it very simple. And then I'm going to transition to the press conference with the Congressional Black Caucus, because they are acting like this is the end of the party. They want to fight. But my question is this the end? And I'm going to go on record and say this is the end of their democracy. And that's just being honest. So let's go to the opinion that basically Justice Alito basically yesterday, it was what day was it? April 29th. And when this decision came out, I mean, I was flabbergasted, and then what troubled me the most was how the Congressional Black Caucus members, they act like, somebody died, it was an assassination. But I'm gonna go ahead and just go on record and tell you and tell the Democrats that every time y'all miss, something happens to y'all. Okay, y'all missed Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. He won the election. Okay, y'all missed at the White House correspondent dinner. Okay, and the Civil Rights Acts and the Voting Rights Acts, as we know it, is literally being deleted. And basically, they're removing history, but there is a catch to that. They're not only moving history, it's like a tit for tat thing. Now that the Democrats have, black representation, somehow they became the racist people. They're the ones that want to cheat and all of that. But I'm going to go ahead and stay on point and just make it real simple and just basically talk about the Supreme Court's decision. And it was actually 6-3. All the conservatives voted for it, including Clarence Thomas, and all the liberals voted for it, including Ketanji Brown Jackson. Okay, now let me see here. Now, Justice Alito delivered the opinion of the court. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Acts of 1965 was designed to enforce the Constitution, not to collide with it. I'm going to say that again. It was designed to enforce the Constitution, not to collide with it. Okay. Now, unfortunately, the lower courts have sometimes applied this court proceedings, in a way that forces the state to engage in a very race-based discrimination that the Constitution forbids. I'm going to say that again. Unfortunately, the lower courts have sometimes applied the court's proceedings in a way that forces the state to engage in the very race-based discrimination that the Constitution forbids. And it's crazy that the Democratic Party, their democracy, literally, the party of slavery and all of that. But we're not going to get in that today. So this is not partisan today. And but the opinion is pretty much making America, what she's supposed to be. Now, this tension between the Constitution came to head when Louisiana redrew its congressional districts after the 2020 census. Now, in 2022, a federal judge in the Middle District of Louisiana held that the map adopted by the state legislature likely violated because it did not include additional majority black district. But when the state drew a new map that contained such a district, its new map was challenged as racial gerrymandering. Okay, racial gerrymandering. Now, in short, racial gerrymandering is drawing electoral district boundaries to give one political party, incumbent, or a group an unfair advantage over others. That's unconstitutional. And they talked about the 14th and the 15th Amendment. And in the 14th Amendment, there's a clause in the 14th Amendment, which is equal protection clause. Okay. Now, at the time when the Voting Rights Acts came to fruition, it was, Jim Crow era, racial segregation, all of that. So the equal protection clause was to protect all individuals, non-whites, all the colors, and more importantly, the blacks, okay, or the African Americans, whatever you want to call yourself today. Now, the 15th Amendment, which was also mentioned, prohibits the federal government and states from denying a citizen, and that's the key word, a citizen. Now you see why they were recruiting, and open the southern border, because on the 2020 census, a lot of individuals classified themselves, whether they were registered with the Republican or Democratic Party, as independents. And I'm going to just tap on a little of that today. But the 15th Amendment prohibits the federal government and states from denying a citizen the right to vote based on race. So how does this play into the court's decision, and how is this a major blow to the Democratic Party today? Because back at that time, they was trying to balance the scales, but somehow, some way, the parties didn't flip, but a lot of whites, left the party. They still Confederates, but they slid to the right side. They put a lot of black people in power. So the black people that's in power and the elected officials somehow decided to do the same thing that these racist Klansmen, these racist segregation now, segregation forever, these racist segregationists has done to our people, to basically run the same play. But it's the same thing, and the Supreme Court has deemed it racial gerrymandering. And that's crazy. Because when you really look at it in a simple form, you have to realize, the Democratic Party, has been making its adjustments. Okay. They say, Donald Trump is a threat to their democracy, but apparently the Supreme Court is a threat to their democracy. See, it's three branches of government. It's the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court gets the final say. And they basically are telling you, you can't do what the slave master did to your own people. So how is it possible that, you have black people in power, doing the same thing that the slave masters, the segregationists, the Klansmen, and all the black codes and all the things that was going on in the South, somehow, some way, you have black elected officials pushing that same narrative and that same agenda. And I blame it on democracy. Okay, I blame it on democracy, because the word democracy is not in the Constitution, and I'm gonna play the Congressional Black Caucus's press conference, and they use that term a lot. But the word democracy is not in the Constitution. America is a constitutional republic. To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. There was a political party called, a Democratic Republic, but once they went to war in the Civil War, the Democratic South, or the Dixiecratic South, or their democracy actually lost. So for a long present time, they've been just somehow rebranding themselves by, clearly in recent histories, let's go ahead and open the southern border, because they basically said the tension came, and the Constitution came to a head when Louisiana redrew its congressional districts after the 2020 census. Why? Because when they did their census, a lot of individuals, black individuals, whether they was registered Republicans or Democrats, and I'm a registered Democrat, but I claim to be an independent. And the independents is the largest voting bloc in the country. And I'll give you facts on that before the end of this video. But they basically said that they're independent, whether they were registered Democrats or not. So they decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and open the southern borders. Let's go ahead and invest in the migrant. Let's run the same play that the white Dixiecratic Southerners did with the Civil Rights Acts and the Voting Rights Act with Lyndon B. Johnson, when he said, I'm going to have those niggers voting Democratic for the next 200 years. So it lasted 60 years. So they basically said, you know what? Let's get another voting block. Let's open the border. Let's give them all the things that, let's bring them to the promised land. But somehow, some way, like I said, y'all missed. Trump became president. Y'all missed again, and y'all lost the Voting Rights Act. And this is devastating. And those are not my words. These are words that that I've heard from the Democratic caucus members, and you will be hearing this very shortly. So, with no further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and jump to the video of the Congressional Black Caucus yesterday. And I'm going to do some commentary. If you want to watch it, it's on PBS News, their YouTube channel. And but I'm going to just play some parts that I think is relevant and that we can hear, and then I'll do some commentary in the midst of. If you want to see the whole video, go to PBS News, and basically this is typically a reaction video, so my job is to react to what's being said. So with no further adu, let's go.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke, Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus for the 119th session of Congress and proud representative of New York's 9th Congressional District, located in Brooklyn, New York. So let's tell the truth, plainly and without apology. American democracy has never been fully formed.
Okay. She said American democracy has never been fully formed because America is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic.
And has never been equally accessible.
And she's 100% right, because the only reason it's not equal is because we have two branches of government, this duopoly that continues to fight. So you see this black woman or African-American woman basically fighting for a party that should not even be in existence, in my personal opinion.
Every inch of progress in this country has been fought for. Won through struggle, through resistance, and through the courage of people this nation tried to leave behind. We did not become a truly multiracial democracy until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 enforced the 15th Amendment, because Black Americans demanded the right to be seen, heard, and counted. That progress was paid for in blood, in sacrifice, and in unbreakable resolve. And now, 60 years later,
60 years.
We are watching that
6-0.
progress be ripped away. With its decision in Louisiana v. Calais, the Supreme Court has opened the door to a coordinated attack on black voters across this country. This is an outright power grab. It's about silencing black voices, dismantling majority black districts, and rigging the map so that politicians can choose their voters instead of the other way around. We've seen this before. We know exactly what this leads to, and we will not go back.
Well, according to the Supreme Court decision, you went back, all the way back, because the race issue has to end. And I appreciate the Supreme Court, for making that decision, because they are basically was deemed in charge with racial gerrymandering, the same thing that they accused their opponent to do. Okay, like I said, racial gerrymandering. This is what they attempted to do, the Black Caucus members or the blacks in the state of Louisiana, in which the Supreme Court has voted down. Racial gerrymandering is drawing electoral districts boundaries to give one political party, their democracy, one incumbent, their incumbents, or a group, black people, an unfair advantage over others. And the issue is you have white individuals that live in those districts. And the Constitution talks about servitude. So meaning there was poor whites that was there. And the poor whites are sitting back saying, like, why do we not have any options? And those options, has to be available to everybody. Okay, because the 14th Amendment, like she mentioned, equal protection clause, the equal protection that we were seeking back in the 60s, back prior to the Civil Rights Acts, those are the same equal protection clauses that the whites or the poor whites or the working class whites are fighting for today, which balances the scales. Now, the scales of justice are balanced. It's not leaning either way. So basically what the Supreme Court did, just balance the scale and protect everyone, not just black, formerly segregated slaves, because it's been 60 years. So we need to get off of this racial conversation to move forward. Now, the 15th Amendment prohibits the federal government and states from denying a citizen. The key word is citizen. So why do the Democrats want to sit back and then bring in all these migrants? Because the citizens are leaning towards sliding to the middle because they know that the equal protection clause should be for everybody, because the federal government prohibits the government and states from denying a citizen the right to vote based on race. And it should not be based on race, because the Civil Rights Act added race, creed, the sexual orientation, immigration status, birth rights. It was a whole lot of things involved. So I don't want to confuse you. I just want to make it simple. But the Supreme Court decision that came down is the right decision, because we are 60 years removed from what we used to be, because the world is not the same. The world is not the same. Let's go ahead and listen to a little more what she got to say.
For years, we sounded the alarm on the Voting Rights Act. As the Voting Rights Act was chipped away piece by piece, today the consequences are here, and they are dangerous. Let me say this clearly. The legitimacy of this court is in crisis.
Wow. She's basically saying, the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. So this is why, we have to figure out what's going on. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court, three branches of government: the executive, legislative, which is the Congress and the Senate, and the Supreme Court. And it's crazy how, as Democrats, as Black Democrats, how unruly and how disrespectful they have become, because they have putting Black people in power. These Black people are in power, but the donors, the money, the people behind it are not Black people, and some of them not even American citizens. They're foreign nationals, individuals that are anti-American. You remember the State of the Address the president had, how disrespectful, Ilhan Omar and, who's a Somali, and then these other individuals would not even stand. Okay, but they stood for the king yesterday. They stood for the king the other day, okay, because the king of Great Britain came to the United States, and it was in Congress this week, and they stood and applauded and took pictures. That's a king, okay? But the disrespect of this great nation and how far left we have went because of putting Black people in leadership. And this is why, we have to really understand what's really going on, because as individuals, as men and women, who are, people of color, I'm a Black man, and my DNA is 97% Native American. Okay. Now we have to really understand that this racial conversations and race baiting and all of that, it's everyone has freedom to do what they choose to do. Okay, it's not the same how it used to be back in the day. I understand why the Civil Rights Act was passed, why the wording was the way that it was back then, but things have changed. We have advanced, but somehow, some way, the Democratic Party, their democracy, is trying to bring something that does not work in 2026, that worked back in slavery time, that worked during, segregation time, that worked during times of struggle, but now everyone, based on the 14th Amendment, equal protection clause, okay, based on the 15th Amendment, no one could be prohibited. The federal government or the states can deny a citizen the right to vote. But why are they still on this? Because they do not want to move forward. They do not want to progress. Now, this is the party that claimed to be progressive, but where is the progressiveness? And we have the Congressional Black Caucus. So maybe now you could stop fighting the Republican Party and start having conversations with the people. Now, I've debated this and I've had a whole bunch of conversations with people, and, democracy or democratic democracy, they by definition is governed by the people. But if the people are governing the people, the Constitution says we the people, then why do we need congressmen? Why do we need senators? Why do we have to vote Democratic or register with the Democrats or have to have an opponent? Because these individuals are paid and hired guns for their donors. These individuals are paid and hired guns to basically, push a situation forward. Now, yesterday I took a deep dive. Okay. Now, if you want to see the full video, go to PBS, their YouTube channel. The whole video is there, but I've seen enough of it because I want to move on. But because I want to talk about the most powerful voting bloc in the United States of America. Now, as of the latest Gallup poll released in January of 2026, based on 2025 polling, 45% of United States, of U.S. adults identify as independents, and that's a record high. And it's a Gallup poll. As of the latest Gallup data released in January 2026, based on the 2025 polling, 45% of U.S. adults identify independents, and that is a record high. Now, if this was truly a democracy, those 45% will be the individuals that will be making the choices, making the decision, giving cohesive ideas for the change, not just a action word or noun, but a verb, put into action. Because I could just imagine if the Congressional Black Caucus was 100% down with reparations, was 100% down with, building black communities, was 100% down with stopping the crime, was 100% down with, securing our southern border, was 100% down with investing in education, in early childhood development, preschool, nursery school, making sure by the 3rd or 4th grade that our students are on another level to be successful. But they somehow, some way side with the Democratic Party, who somehow, some way has basically hired some bootlegging trustees, and that's what I call them, because they're not looking out for the people. They're looking out for themselves. So their democracy is in shambles. So based on that, and I'll give you the rest of the context. So 45% of U.S. adults identify as independent, which is a record high, and that's based on the Gallup data of 2026. And now 27% identify as Democrat, and 27% identify as Republicans. Now that roughly means U.S. population is 340 million. Okay, now the dose of the population is between 258 million and 260 million. So 45% of adults, roughly 117 million Americans, who say that they are politically independent. So why do we have a Democratic Party? Okay, well, the Constitution talks about the republic, to the republic which it stands. That's the Pledge of Allegiance. So now we can understand that this is the end of their democracy, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to adjust. They can't call an audible. They can't turn. They can't learn new things. They're still trying to, keep us in chains, like Joe Biden said, because you have these, several Black Caucus members, and you have black people in leadership. But these individuals really don't understand, because when I look at the word Democrat, that's basically mean ruled by the devil. You could debate me on all that, because when I look at theocrat, that means ruled by God. If you want to study God or become a minister or preacher or an educator in terms of a religion, you go study theology. But if you want to be on the flip side or the opposition of theology, what is that? Demonology. So like I said, and then the just to close out and make it make sense, because I know our attention span is a little different, because the key component to the court's decision was racial gerrymandering. Okay, that's exactly what they were deemed. That's what they did. Racial gerrymandering. And racial gerrymandering is drawing electoral districts or boundaries to give one political party, an incumbent or a group, an unfair advantage over others. That's in short. Now, the 14th and 15th Amendment, which they continue to use, and the 14th Amendment is equal protection clause. That means everybody, all y'all, not by race, not by none of that. In the 15th Amendment, prohibits the federal government and states from denying a citizen the right to vote based on race. So with that being said, hit that like, hit that notification, because like I say, God's people shall not perish due to lack of knowledge. Have an amazing day. It's your man, Better Black America TV, YouTube, A Better Black America radio show on Facebook. Have an amazing day. Peace out.